Now, in this session, we'll actually talk about operating issues that concern the finance function and concern its head, the CFO. But before I introduce the session and the issues that will be presented, I want to tell both of you how delighted I am to see you, and I hope it feels the same for you to be with friends again. So it really is nice. The way the session is going to work is as follows. Partha will help you, or through his experience, set priorities, because you have to deal with a number of issues. There are multiple issues to grapple with, different deliverables. Often they conflict with each other. You have to think about allocating your personal attention, what deserves the greater attention in your pecking order. Then you have to think about long-term and short-term crises. What do you manage first? And then how do you deal with upskilling of your staff, which has now become a serious problem for all companies. So I'm really delighted to be able to welcome my panelists who are sitting in front of you. Partha, who is currently Vice Chairman of All Cargo Logistics. Very often, you know, we have been giving CFO of the Year awards for many years. More recently, we stopped when a lot of other people came into the game. But people and friends of mine, people like you, my peers, would come and say how happy they were to receive our award. In this case, I have to tell you how happy we were that Partha accepted our award. So it's, you know, one of those rare treats for us that he participated in them and accepted as CFO of the Year. In his current role, he works closely with the promoters of his company, All Cargo, to bring in new systems, longer-term vision, upscaling the skill sets of the younger members of the team and function. But he lends only a part of his time here. He spends a greater part of his time doing the things that he truly believed were important to him, which is why he left his last job at Mahindra & Mahindra. He was president of M&M Mobility in his last job. Before that, the Group Chief Financial Officer, and he left that against the wishes of his then chairman, Anand Mahindra. But that is something that is close to his heart, which he enjoys, and during the evening functions, when you get a chance, please do talk to him about it. But he also serves as an independent director at LIC, the government-owned insurance company, as well as Cloud9 Hospitals, which is a leading chain. He has taken upon himself to bring up the standard of the National Institute of Industrial Engineering, one of India's premier management and engineering training institutes, to the rank of a premier global class institute, where he spends a lot of his time. I'm really delighted to welcome Deep back. Deep Sengupta is currently President and Chief Revenue Officer of Cloud4C. So what he has done in his current role is that he has been able to build a global business in a short period of time that operates in 26 countries, 54 locations, 4,000 employees. Many of us will remember him, meeting him at our forums and conferences when he was wearing a different hat, and that hat was that of President and Managing Director of SAP India and South Asia. What he achieved there was really made his beat the fastest globally growing business within his organization, and basically he emerged as a trusted advisor to chief executives and chief technology officers of the large 50, 70 companies in our country. Under his leadership, his company, SAP India, was consistently ranked as the #1 best place to work by the Great Places to Work, the organization which ranks all this. So welcome back, Deep. His background has in fact been in information technology. He's worked with companies like IBM, DEC or Hewlett Packard. He studied at London Business School and at Stanford University. So the way this is going to work is very simple. I'm going to ask Partha to kick off. He will explain some of the issues that you grapple with, he has grappled with for a greater part of his life, how he has been able to prioritize those issues, and then Deep will tell you how you can use technology and make your life simple in order to deal with the very issues that Partha will raise. So with those words, welcome back my dear friends, and it's so lovely to see you. And this is probably going to be one of the last few sessions where I will have the privilege of sitting on the dais, but I'm happy that it will be one where I'm in the company of friends. Please join me in saying welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Generally I am, but so yeah. So I was just going to say, Rajat is somewhere there. Yeah, sorry. I can still see him. So if I comment on him, he should be around, right? So this is that small bit of thing that I read in one of the postscript, where there is a puriwala who sits outside a factory, and outside the factory everybody is standing, in protest, and said, "Hamari mange puri karo." So that puriwala puts up his own placard, "Hamari puri ki mang karo." So आज की ऐसा है कि हमारी मांगे पूरी करो वाली टाइम चला गया, हमारी पूरी की मांग करो. What we have is what we want to, make bigger and take it to the entire world and do it. And that's, I think, Rajat, that's what I took out from your session. Yeah, so हमारी मांगे मत पूरी करो, हमारी पूरी की मांग करो. So I just thought that I will connect that. अच्छा, अगर तालियां बजा रहे हो तो आंखों में नमी और तालियों में कमी कभी नहीं होनी चाहिए, तो जोर से बजाइए. Thank you. So in a very different sense, I feel very nostalgic about being here today. Nostalgic because this is a forum I used to belong to for a very long time, and that's what he said, and I was delighted to be acknowledged by IMA first before anybody else, and they did it on their own. I mean, they had that methodology, and you said you have arrived, and thank you very much for that. I still, it holds a pride of a place and will continue to hold always. The second part today is nostalgic because in a sense I moved into the role of a general management away from CFO, yeah, so which is the vice chair trying to make the company go into the next one. Even my last association, which he said, was president of mobility sector, which was running 3-4 businesses of Mahindra. Okay, so in a sense today could be seen as me trying to tell you, कर चले हम फिदा जाने सन साथियों, अब तुम्हारे हवाले CFO की function साथियों. So that kind of a thing. So please let me indulge with a little bit. अगर कभी लगे कि ये क्या sermon दे रहा है, ये तो अपना ही है, मैं अपना ही हूँ, but this is what I have learned over a period of time. Okay. So what I'm going to do in the next 15-17 minutes is to talk to you about what I think are the priorities from here onwards for CFO and how you should look at it. And I'm not going to tell you कि भाई capital खरीदो या this. I'm more in terms of how should you look at it, how you should strategically look at your function, and how should you push some of the buttons. This is what I'm going to kind of try to tell you. अगर अच्छा लगे तो end में फिर से तालियां बजाना, नहीं तो गालियां मत देना. Okay, so that's what. अरे कौन अभी तो दूसरी डायलॉग बोलना पड़ेगा अभी. अपने कर कमलों को कष्ट दीजिए और सन्नाटे को नष्ट कीजिए. This is the other one to say. You can clap. Yeah, so that's that apart. Okay, so let's start with this, and this is one of the key themes that I want to go with. So when you go forward, your priority should be enable, enhance, engender. Just 3 E's. What is enable, enhance, and engender? Enable, whatever the organization wants to do, enable it. But just move one step forward and say, I want to enhance it. What do I want to enhance? I want to enhance whatever the organization is not fully thinking through. Like when you have a car, you go and ask somebody, what is the new car he wants? He says, I want this function and that function. But how the interior should be designed is left to the designer. You are now the designer of the car called your company. So how do you design that? What do you hold in as competency? What do you outsource? What do you want to hold as things which are coming in? This is the second one, enhance. But the third one is what will set you apart. Many times you have told you, right, you are the counselor, you are a de facto and de jure COO. But how do you ever try to enact that COO role? It is when you engender. Engender means creating new business models, creating new verticals, new revenue streams. And how do you create a CFO? You create because you have the power of what is called as connecting the dots. You know everything that is happening. If you give yourself the time from the drudgery of day to day and then sit back, you can pinpoint what organization needs and to go to that next. And that is engender. So I'll leave that. So, but if this is the theoretical framework of enable, enhance, engender, I was just thinking, how do you design your destiny when you go forward? Okay. So if you want to design how to design your destiny, and therefore I'll give you 5 words, only 5 words, 5 letters each, and that if you follow, you should be able to design your destiny. Each of them will have your own colors, your own design, but these are the 5 words, 5 letters each, which you kind of can use to do. So this is your kind of end. So I'm just saying those are yield, climb, unmix, fable and prime. 5 words. So and I will go through each one of them very quickly, and then I will shut up and hand over the technology expert. And by the way, I have deep relationship with Deb Deep. Okay. So and I've done many SAP implementation in my earlier organizations together, and some of them may be world class and leading, industry leading practices. So but coming back to this 5 one, the first is yield. Yield is like Maruti one, kitna deti hai? So ask every time इधर कितना देती है, मेरा कंपनी कितना पेट्रोल पे कितना, मतलब कैसे, how do I get the extra mile, extra kilometers from the company? Remember, there is no end to squeezing this dry towel. I'll give you an example. I joined Mahindra in 2000 and took care of the tractor sector. And tractor business, I joined as transformation agent as an HR head, but immediately 3 months later I had the finance function as well. So, and we went and said, oh, what should we do? We said we will do this, that we will get 10% ROS, 2 times ATO is equal to 20 ROC. Correct, na? This equation is correct, most of you know this. So we started with that. Guess what is the ROC of tractor which we ended up with? Any idea? Just take a guess, it doesn't matter. Dalmia, you are from Dalmia, right? So just any guess. 30%, good. Any other guesses? 50-60%. Okay, I'll tell you, it's not this, 120% ROC over 18 years, not 1 year, 2 years. We achieved it in 2003. To date, it stands. Always 3-digit and average 120% ROC. How can it happen? It can happen very simply if you can get your asset turn to 7 times and ROS to 20%. 20 into 7, 140. Thoda bahut upar niche, 120. But a simple equation. But the key thing is, how do you get 7? And that's why yield is so important as an agenda for a CFO. Ask, mango to aur milega, kitna deti? So ask every of your department heads, what will you do? What will you increase? Okay? And by the way, I went to last time they called me tractor and they told me कि पार्था अब तो नहीं हो सकता. मैंने कहा नहीं अभी भी हो सकता है. तो उन्होंने बोला कैसे? मैंने बोला तुम्हारा वर्किंग कैपिटल जो है अभी भी पॉजिटिव है, नेगेटिव वर्किंग कैपिटल नहीं है. अगर तुम नेगेटिव वर्किंग कैपिटल करो तो और 15 निकलेगा, 15-20 ROC. So this is the being mean. But if you want to communicate this in the company, this will not happen by only the departmental heads. Every individual needs to participate. So if you ask them, don't talk about ROC, ATO, ROS, वो सब हम समझते हैं. What will you ask a common man? If you tell him less input, input later, more output, output sooner. That should give you a simple answer. Put it as a slogan out there. And let everyone say what did he contribute to less input, input later, more output, output sooner. And let that be one KRA for every individual of the company. Just see the magic it will create. You will have to work with CEO for this. But I am the CEO now, so I am working with him. Yeah? Right. Okay. Second one is in terms of climb. As much as you can get yield. Grow more से no more होने में time नहीं लगेगा. So what you need to do is to say, I have evolved business, I have evolving business, but how do I get startups in my company? Okay? And that is an important thing. You know, most of the time we are CFOs, we say, अच्छा एक और proposal लेके आ गया. I think now is the time to say, मैं एक और proposal लेके जाऊंगी to create a new vertical or new investment. This is a mindset change that you need to bring, because you are investing. Without startup, there is no future. Without new businesses. Okay, let me give you an example again. And sometimes when I say I'm giving example from my experience, it should not happen that we all say, yaar, ye to, matlab, you know, it's like mukhastuti hai. But these are examples which I believe are relevant to this. Okay, so just let me give you an example, and this is some of you will recognize this. Mahindra was selling three-wheelers for transporting goods, and the growth will not happen in the three-wheelers. Try as we may, no growth will come. In fact, it was regrowing segment. You know, Tata Ace, you heard of this product, right? Mahindra, equivalent of that, and so on, but it will not increase. So I kept asking, what can we do? So I said, you know what the problem statement is? The load givers all sit in a mandi, and the load takers are all across the city. Never the twain can they meet, and this causes a huge loss of frustration for the load takers and no ability to service for the load givers. Yeah? So this demand and supply could not meet. So what can we do? Now the problem is known, you all know what the solution is, right? Put a platform on top and did. So we put a skunk project, which is the investment, by investing 2 crore rupees. Okay? Then we found out there is some other company also doing this called Porter. We called it Smart Shift. We invested in Porter as well. 2 years later, we merged these two companies, which is number 1 and number 2 in India, in terms of the platform for cities. The last time Porter, I was the chairman of that company before I stepped down. Last money that they have taken is $800 million. So the post-money valuation is $800 million. So I'm very shy, very small portion away from being a $1 billion company, a unicorn. So this is what you can create when you do startups. Why am I saying this so proudly? Because I took the proposal up. Okay? But let me also say that there will be failures. I thought this is a great thing. So I said, oh, agar idhar ho sakta hai, to tractor mein bhi ho sakta hai. So I started a new company called Tringo. Tringo is belly up right now. We merged it back into this. Idea is right, but for some reason it has not succeeded. You will have failures as well. But you cannot succeed unless if you are afraid of failure. So that's the second part that you can do. The third one is unmix. Okay, I had to get a 5-letter word. Okay, so unmix is what I can get for complexity, simplicity. So I put unmix. Okay, so everything has to, right? You have to say it nicely. So unmix is reducing complexity. So one of the key things that you can think of doing it. How do you make life simple? If as a CFO you are doing one job, strategically think about simplicity. But don't think simplicity is either simple or it's just good to do. This is ROC accretive. The last time I ran a simplicity project, it gave me 200 crores of saving annually and gave me 50 bips increase, and I realized one thing, that like electricity, every time you do an energy audit, you can save 20%. If you do simplicity project, you can save about 20–30%. Yeah. So I say this is paying thing. Simplicity as a mantra, not for a customer, it's magic. It will make you heroes, but it is value accretive for you. So that's what you do as 3. Okay. The 4th is fable. Fable is how well do you tell your stories of success? Because any great organization is built on stories of how great you do. So don't forget fable. Don't forget that, yeah? Don't say ye bhuli dastan fir lo yaad aa gaye, aise nahi. It is the, walk to the future is always made up of great stories of the past. What is any global brand? What is Porsche? What is Ferrari? It's a series of stories told over time immemorial. So build your stories. And as a function, build those stories of what you do so that you are accepted and you are seen better. And do it always and every time. So this is the 4th thing that I would say. And the last but not least is that trust is paramount, so prime. So you are a trust repository of trust. You are the goalkeeper as well. So how do you manage all these things unless you create a trust paramount called prime? So the last one is prime. So if you can do, and here what you think of is compliance, which is easy, which is what you do as this, and governance. Okay? And governance, let me give you a tippani, which is what is my theory. I need Adit's help to write this into a good write-up one of these days. The biggest ailment in this world is because of triple bottom line. The reason it is ailment is because you equate people and planet with profit. Because people and planet are edge objectives, profit is quarterly, is now, here. Because you are equating these, you are getting an ailment of always profit winning, other two losing out, and then we blame that we are not working well. So if you want thinking of governance, put out people plus profit as objective, put the process of profit and process of governance. So 2P equal to 2P. And then you will be able to drive a prime in the organization, which will give you new meaning. Okay? So those are the 5 things that I wanted to talk about. So recaptured, prime, yield, climb, unmix, fable, and prime. And if you do that, I would think your priority of 22 and beyond will be there. What you put in yield, what you put in climb, unmix, and fable and prime, for each one of you may be different. But you can put your own blocks, building blocks, and your own color in order to kind of do that. So, and here it is what I leave it. I would have wanted to talk about technology, but then मैं बोलूँगा तो देव क्या बोलेगा. So I just said I left it at generic, and each one of these elements you can talk about how technology can impact, and moreover how technology is the lifeblood of achieving this is what he will talk about. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Deep. Yeah, you're so much fun.
So it's always a tough act to follow after Partha, and I'm not so good in Hindi, shairis, so I'll stick to English. And from designing your destiny to making it happen, from the executive overview to the execution perspective, that's what I want to cover. What I don't want to bore you with technology or digital transformation. I know you have had an overdose of this over the last couple of years. So what I'm going to talk about is, given the perspective which Partha shared from a CFO agenda perspective, what could be the technology imperatives and what are the factors which is driving the technology imperatives? That is what I'm going to talk about today. I hope it makes a little bit of sense. And it connects the dots between what Partha has said as a CFO agenda to what it takes to make it happen on the ground, right? Because you would need the technology layer. So one of the things, what has happened in last 2 or 3 years, which has possibly got accelerated, we are living in the world of Instagram followers, likes, and 5-star ratings. How many of you do a 5-star rating of a product or a service which you use in your personal life? Possibly yes. Most of you do, right? How many of you read a review before consuming any product or service? If you have to go for a prospective employer, how many times will you look at the Glassdoor or something else to review about the prospective employer? Right? Everybody. And in your organization, when you try to attract talent, they will do the same thing. Your customers, your consumers will do the same thing. Right? And that has accelerated. It doesn't matter whether I'm a B2B business, whether I'm a B2C business, or a B2B to B2C business. We live in the world today of what is called the experience economy, right? Where your consumer experience, your employee experience are in a way undifferentiated because your employees are your consumers and vice versa, right? That is what is called total experience. And where words like engagement, loyalty, satisfaction, advocacy becomes very, very important, right? The key question then is, while we have our profits to manage, while we have our operation, KRAs to be met as CFOs, are we designing the organization, the business architecture, which is catered towards this experience economy? Or are we still living in the past? It is not about the technology architecture which matters the most. It is the business architecture, right? It is about the journey maps, what you have as a consumer. It is about the journey maps when a new employee joins your company, what's the kind of experience they go through? When a new customers come on board, what's the experience they go through? That is what needs to be looked into more than the technology. That's why I'll repeat. It is not about the technology architecture which matters. It is your business design and your business architecture. How you're curating the experience. And it is not just about the onboarding process. When you attract, in today's world, doesn't matter whether you're in manufacturing, services, obviously, we are in a talent crunch, despite whatever we say, right? Similarly, the competition is getting tough on the customer front. How many of us are paying attention, either at the board level, or at the CFO level, or at the technology level, on curating these experiences? Because as consumers, we ourselves would expect this. Why would it be any different from any of our other stakeholders? I think that's a key question we got to ask ourselves. So, one of the things, so this is a study which was done by XM Institute during the time of pandemic. The main review, while I show the data, the main part of the, I would say the analysis of the study, companies which curated or designed their organization architecture to keep the experience in mind, outperform, even during a downturn, significantly their peers. And this is done across all the US, basically, SEC traded companies, traded on NYSE, NASDAQ, and so on and so forth. If you can see the chart, what differentiates between the leaders and the laggards. And there's a clear correlation between companies which are designed to curate to the, because in the audience I have seen fantastic companies, not just global companies like Airbnb, or I can see somebody from Accor, some other organizations. There are a lot of examples in India, like Partha gave fantastic examples. The kind of branding, I would say, the experience journey which Mahindra and Mahindra Group went through, right, in order to provide both on the employee front as well as on the consumer and the customer front. So there are many such examples, even in India, where companies have outperformed their peer group in a downturn. Because with the given global headwinds, while we are not witnessing that in India, this fact has been proven time and again, that if you can cater to these two constituents and curate for that example, for that experience, you would do far better. So with that, what do you need to do? I've set the context. I've set the background for the technology imperative or the agenda, what is required for your CIOs, who usually reports to you, who will come to you for a budget. I'm not saying write a check every time. What are the considerations you should have? What are the valuation you should do before you write a check or before you approve? So there was a recent study done by McKinsey which talks about what should be the CIO imperatives over the next 12 months, especially in today's time. So the number one, the role of the CIO itself is changing, whether you call it CIO, CTO, CDO, Partha being one who carried both the hats earlier. I think gone are the days when the CIO sat in the office with his team and designed things. Empathy is the right word when you design curate a customer journey, when you design an employee journey. If they're not engaging, let's say interdepartmental with HR, with sales, and designing their journey through technology, they're not doing their jobs. That's the number one most important priority, to have empathy. Empathy by putting yourself in the shoes of others when you design a system, when you design a process. Number two, it is not about the tech. Cloud is not about the tech. Cloud is about the agility. Like Partha talked about, fail fast. I try something, it doesn't work, I can shift immediately. I try something else which works, I can scale up quickly. That is the agility which a technology like cloud provides. So are you adopting holistically this entire technology? I think that's a consideration you're going to be asking your CIOs. It's about the agility. The battle today is about what is called tech intensity. Physical companies, brick and mortar companies, we know are becoming digital companies and vice versa. If you don't have world-class tech talent, doesn't matter whether you're a brick and mortar company or you're a digital company. If your tech intensity is not world-class, it will be very difficult for you to compete. Finally, it is about growth mindset, not just for the CIO, at an organization level. Are we willing to fail fast? Are we willing to learn from our mistakes? And as CFOs, are you encouraging small experiments and learning from failure? If you see what is happening if you're a traditional company, what is happening on the digital native space, they're not afraid of failing fast and learning from their mistake and growing faster. Is that the mindset you're able to imbibe in your organization? I think these are the questions one needs to be thinking about. Finally, no matter where you are, if you are a digital company, if you have digital presence, you will get attacked sometime or the other. Is it part of your GRC process? It is not just a CIO or CTO's job or the CISO's job. Is cybersecurity part of your governance, risk, and compliance process? Because every company is today digital and physical, and you will get attacked no matter what you do. I know it's a most often misused word, data is oil, and we have a lot of junk data in our organization. The key issue is, do we have insights? Are we able to drive insights to take decisions? I think that's the only question you're going to be asking before you invest in any data project. And what is the insight? What is the business outcome it will drive? So I would say, if I follow through on Partha's 5-fold agenda, what does it take to execute? These are the 6 points which I think should be the priority of, and I'm not saying that, as I said, it's a study from McKinsey which talked about that. These are the 6 priorities which any organization for their technology imperatives should be considering. And lastly, just a little bit about Cloud4C. We have been working, as Adit said, across various industries, 26 different countries. We are expanding every day across various industries, helping customers drive through this transformation journey. With that, thank you very much, and I hope I was within time, Adit. Thank you.
Actually, thank you. We are still waiting for questions to come, but there is one common issue that both of you alluded to, and I want to raise that in the context of finance people. Now, you both talked about the importance of having a growth bias, where you both explained that comes with risk, encourage failures, deep set small experiments, etc. Now, I have never been a real entrepreneur, so my vision is bound to be very limited. When I look at these sort of things on the boards of companies where I sit, I always find the risk element overriding the growth bias element. Now, it is the job of the finance director to take that position. In these boards, I am never supported by anyone apart from the CFO. Everybody else thinks that, you know, we are going to succeed, we'll make so much money, and we have to do it. Do you not believe that there must be one voice of conscience and one voice of moderation in the top echelons of the boardroom which says, no, hang on, I like your fancy ideas, but explain to me the risk of them going down. Please, both of you comment one by one. In the meantime, other questions will follow.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is, the clear thing is, role that CFO has to play is to highlight or to bring to the fore the risk that exists in any. Okay? But I am going a step ahead, that if you say the role is of the CFO is a de facto and de jure COO, then he should do one, or he or she should do one step ahead and call this risk reward paradigm. Bring the risk reward both to the fore and let Sena heads make a decision. Second part I am just suggesting is you have to experiment sometimes. You don't know, and nobody in the board or even the management team, even whether Tringo will fail or pass or this will fail, who knows? Yeah, either the king will die or I will die or the horses will fly. Nobody knows this, right?
Yeah.
But how does a CFO then look at this? Can he say 3 things? I will let you guys decide some of the experiments you want to do. I'll put both the reward and risk, but you can't bet more than 20% of the revenue of the company, 20% of the profits of the company. This makes the sandboxing of the experiments that you create. It doesn't kill the company, and you can fail fast, as I said. That's why failing fast is important. The last thing I have to offer before I go, can you fire bullets before firing the cannonball? When somebody comes and says, my idea is great, look at the world that between you and me, like Bernard Shaw. So then you tell him, okay, prove me in a smaller environment. I often offered one of my subsidiary companies which has small revenue and said, tu idhar prove karke dikha, then I go to the board along with you. Yeah, so fire bullets before firing cannonball.
The small experiments, like Deep also said.
Absolutely. I'll just pick up both on the risk reward and the smaller experiments. And I think it is very important to define the threshold, organization tolerance level for failure, whether it's 10%, 20% of your EBITDA or your top line or whatever it is. I'll go further. Many organizations today have started creating what is called a corporate venture wing, CVC, right? Where they put part of their, again, large companies, where they put part of their risk capital as corporate venture to encourage collaboration and innovation, not just within, not just skunk works, but also in the ecosystem. Because innovation sometimes, when you go big, it's very difficult to do everything internally. You have to collaborate with the ecosystem. So creating corporate venture, because you will see some of the largest conglomerates in India have been very successful in creating a sort of a corporate venture where they put maybe 10%, 20% of the risk capital as a separate, either as Partha mentioned as investment in some of these companies to encourage, or even in skunk work kind of projects. I think encouraging that, having that growth mindset, ultimately even the CVC ends up reporting to the CFO or the Director of Finance, right? So these are some of the concepts which are well tested and tried out, and we should be open to considering some of those.
So I don't want to linger too long, but one clarification I would like, because this is something that is worth trying in some of the companies that I'm associated with. You keep these ventures at arm's length because culturally they are bound to be different.
Exactly. That's why you do investment as a VC, like a VC through a corporate venture wing.
So did you do that at Mahindra?
Yeah. So two parts to it. Just to give a newer example, this is one of the things that I've set up in Alcargo. We set up a 100 million fund separately, and Vaishnav Shetty, who is the next generation entrepreneur, so young guy can do, whose job is to say that you go and get POCs for new things that can take our company to the next league. We can't develop all technology in-house, so go and get those technology. So what we will offer is POC. So just a slight deviation from what you say, and therefore either be an accelerator or incubation center. And where required, invest money also. So money doesn't become the primary objective, but it becomes that objective. But we have set up that fund. And what came out in Mahindra, just to answer the question, set up 3 ICs, or investment committees, one in M&M, one in Mahindra Finance, and one in Tech Mahindra, because they have very different needs. So did that. Yeah.
Very nice. This is okay. Can I go to Airbnb, Vivek?
Yeah, thank you, Adit. Firstly, my gratitude to both the speakers, Partha and Deep. Actually, I really enjoyed the way you put up the presentation. Very short, precise, yet so meaningful. Thank you for that. My question is to Deep. So Deep, Airbnb, as you mentioned, is a technology company, not a travel company as most of them would relate to. But our CEO always said that we are a design company, right? And design company is to create an experience, right? And everything follows from that. And my question to you is on the thought, like, how do we institutionalize the experience, right? One of the ways what we do is that was through our culture and the values, which is so embedded. We don't have the cultures and the values written on the boardroom or on the walls. It's embedded into everything day in and out in our behavior, how we do and what we do, right? It is also related to the people we hire. And it is also the mission-driven company. So we actually created this, like everyone can belong everywhere, and which went so well with the culture and the values and the system that it became to design the experience. Now, I want to know beyond that, how do you see that we could institutionalize experience? Like, how do you see it from outside?
So, very important question. Basically, if I understand your question, how do you scale the experience? So, and if you see, not just in your industry, there are multitude ways of, scaling the experience. One is to enhance it. Second is to look at the adjacency areas. Third is to even go physical, right? Because I know Airbnb does not own properties, but you can also have experience centers. You can also look into adjacencies. So if you look at Amazon as a classic case, from a totally digital company, they're a physical company now, right? There are many such, right? Physical companies becoming totally digital companies. In the logistics space, that's happening every day, and Partha can speak a lot more about that. So at the end of the day, the way I look at it is, whether you're a digital-only company, whether you're a physical company, it is how, I call it phygital, physical and digital put together. How do you curate an experience which is seamless? It's easier said than done, and not just for your consumer or customers, even for your employees.
So, I want to pick a point that Vivek had mentioned. So obviously they have curated their onboarding experience for new employees so that the culture of the organization is embedded in their genes. Mota moti ye, so you don't have slogans on your walls. Can you explain how technology can be used to help achieve what he's saying?
They're already using technology to do that.
Then share with us, no? How are you doing that? What do you do?
So, our entire policy decision or our day-to-day, even right from, say, business decisions or investment decisions, or are based on our guiding factor on the culture and the principles. Like, for example, we live the diversity values, right? For example, how do we, when we say everyone can belong everywhere, how do we actually curate through our processes, through our products, through our services, and how do we practice? For example, we have been working with communities very largely, and in our policies, for example, during the COVID, without actually, we had a cancellation policy, right? So every people we have a cancellation policy, but when COVID happened, nobody knew, and in Europe and US, people plan years ahead of the travel, right? And so they were like non-refundable. The first decision we took in early April when March the COVID hit was that we would refund everybody, right? Now, the question was not like, it was going through the principles because we were working with the community, but then there is a guest problem was solved, but what about the host who were depending on the income, right? So the CEO stood up and said that we are going to fund, and we had a host community involved in that decision making, and there was some part let go by them, but they were like about more than $500 million committed to it. At that point of time, the decision was made when we didn't know the future and how it would pan out. So, but it paid a great dividend in creating those values and living those values. And today the supply is a constraint, right? So demand is not a constraint. But the host with us will not go to the competitor because of so many n number of examples of this values and culture, what I said. And we don't own the property, and there is a complete independence of the host to attach with any of them.
Very good.
So it's like people and profit, right? So it comes both, as Partha said.
Very nice. Can I go to Amit Agrawal at Aon?
Yeah, hello. Thanks Adit. Thanks Partha and Deb for your insights. My question, actually I want to extend what Adit has asked, and I have always believed that every person's behavior in an organization is driven by three factors primarily. One is top line, second is bottom line, and third is governance. And I, being a finance guy all over, I can't help but to put everything in numbers, even when I'm talking about the behavioral aspects. So when I say top line, bottom line, and governance, I thought, and this is how I have, probably I drive the teams and put the KRAs. A CEO might have 60% top line, 30% bottom line, and 10% governance. CCO has 100% governance, Chief Compliance Officer, 100% governance, and top line, bottom line, probably he doesn't care. COO may have, more of a bottom line through efficiencies, and business heads again, more of a top line and little bit of a bottom line, but no governance. CFO, I always believed it should be like 50% of governance and rest 50% divided into top line or bottom line. Some people might argue that bottom line is much higher in this entire spectrum, but through cost efficiency. But what you talked, Partha, is more about the other spectrum, that is top line or growth. How does it gel with the entire, basic concept of when we divide the behavioral aspects of different leaders? Like how a CFO should behave in these three, if you can put in these three aspects of the behavioral.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a beautiful question because it brings out the challenge in even understanding and perceiving how to go about this role. So you brought that dimension very clearly. First is, if you recall, that prime I said is only on governance. Yeah. Okay. So I did not put anything above the other. I just built up in terms of order of, maybe importance. Yeah, in that sense. Yeah. Okay. So but all are equally important. Like you said, top line or bottom line, and this. But I was more fixing on how rather than what. Yeah, governance is, you can say what. And top line and bottom line. I said yield. How do you think about process of going towards saying I want to improve the culture of continuous improvement in the organization, the culture of breakthrough in the organization. Okay. The second one was not about only growth, but about climb. How risk reward paradigm comes in and matches. Okay. So in a sense, what I was saying is that don't only say risk, don't only say no risk. Like you said, everyone, it says everything will go well, but everything will not go well, that's for certain. So how do you bring the risk reward paradigm? Okay, this is what I actually, for all senior leaders, I have a program which we go through, 2-day program, where we actually go through risk reward paradigm. We have industry experts come and talk, and we, for that business, cull out a risk reward charter, okay, together. So that's co-creating that. So it is not about climb, it's about saying what parameters, how do you want, how you want to kind of live through it. So, okay, so this is the context of what I said. But now answering your question, if I have to put it in this, I want to change the paradigm to some extent, which is why I said put people and planet on one side and process of profit and process on governance. If you put maybe instead of the 3, you will have 4, and then you can divide your KRA into those 4. I would encourage it. And I think that's the new normal you could do to the organization. This is a new world. These are new challenges. Why work with old paradigms? Okay, so that's the thought process I'm giving to you. Each one of you can take and look at how you want to kind of mold it. Yeah, not directly saying 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but saying, hey, here is a different object, and then you can put it.
Okay. Can I go to Himanshu, please?
Yeah, hello. Thank you. Thank you very much for the nice presentation. In fact, my question was similar to the earlier question. I think it got covered. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay.
Partha, and actually Deep as well. I had a question which bothers me every time we have a discussion on technology, and we go through examples of organizations who've done a great job, some who've not. There's a whole population of companies that were born in the last 10, 15 years, and then there is everybody else. What it takes to create, for example, the experiences Airbnb explained and some of the others you took, most of these organizations were born in the last 10, 15 years. They had no legacy, so to speak, and no already established way of running businesses. The big challenge is for that other group. Companies who, let's say, till 10 years ago were already successful in a very different world. Sometimes all of this sounds very fancy, and yes, you should make great experiences, and yes, this, yes, that. But the point is, these companies became successful doing something else. How does management find the right balance? Because you have to actually believe in it. You can't do it just because you heard of it at a conference, and you have to get all your employees around it. Any examples that both of you could share? Maybe, Partha, because you've done so many, and Deep, you would have talked to.
So I think automotive is a great example. Right, Partha comes from automotive, right? Before Tesla, how did you buy car? How do you still buy your car?
Old-fashioned way.
Go to the dealership, right? Today, when you buy a car, do you ever go to a dealership, check out model and all that? You don't. Look at your journey.
Thank you.
Does a CEO have an option? If you don't curate your example, I'm giving a very simple example. Look at when you last time you bought a car, did you go to the dealership to decide which car you want to buy? You don't. Right? So that's a classic example which we live in our daily lives. And you buy a car maybe once in 5 years or 7 years or 3 years, depending upon whether you're a motorhead or not.
Go ahead, Adit, you had.
No, you see, I am a different generation, but I can understand some of the issues that Akhil and Neeru and Tej are grappling with in our company. Our company started 25, 27 years ago, and it was based on a certain model. The model basically meant a peer group of people who ran businesses or who ran important functions within these businesses, for them to give them a platform to engage with each other. The second was very strong research content, for which we have lots of people who are highly trained. Now what has happened is that a new generation of companies have come up. They will charge you 15,000 rupees a year and say, okay, everybody come together. Now, everybody who comes together are technically not peers deep. They may, there are tremendous variances. They don't have much in common, but they don't charge anything. Nobody wants research because nobody reads anything anyway. People are no longer interested. So how does one transform to adapting realities of the new marketplace is an issue that we are all grappling with. I suppose that was the context.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example. And Partha and I have experience with a research-based company. We are on board of that company. And I'm sure you've heard of a word called freemium. Right?
Yeah.
You put the teaser as a freemium, the models are evolving. Once you start consuming, depending upon the level of consumption, it is depending upon the quality of content, right? And the quality of consumption, right? You start charging, because what you have to do is that you have to charging pay-per-use kind of a thing, pay-per-view kind of a thing. So the economic model is changing, the fundamental business is not changing, the economic model is changing, and I would say your key capability is actually deep research. That doesn't go away. How you render it, how you put your business model across, how you make it easier for consumption is what you got to think about. Again, Partha, please.
Yeah. Sorry, Akhil, you touched a fundamentally important area, and maybe this is worth discussing off, in the chat where we can spend 10-15 minutes only on this conversation, because there are no easy answers on this. But this you read, having the physical is as important as having the digital. Don't think the digital is one.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, it's wrong perception. They will win, because there's the new companies which will come. Some companies will win. Okay. So this, I think, if you keep this as an axiom, you have to, whichever place you are in, you have to evolve towards the other one, whereas a phygital world, I call it not e-commerce, experiential commerce. The new world is of experiential commerce, how the customer likes to experience me. I would like you to rethink your strategies from experiential commerce point of view, and you will have new solutions. Yeah, that's done. But this is a beautiful question to spend some time on. Like you said, I spend half my time on counseling on these kind of issues. Okay.
Thank you. May I go to Boston Scientific, Supriya?
Hi, thank you so much, and it was a very insightful session. So building upon what Akhil has asked, I also wanted to talk about, organizations like us who are actually mature in their technology. And the biggest challenge that we face, so as to say that we have a technology strategy, but how does that tie up with our business? So we already have existing technology, like I would say, I'll just take a name like Concur, probably a few other systems in Oracle, etc. But when you talk about putting more technology on top of it, sometimes the challenge is that these technologies don't talk to each other. And the biggest challenge that we face as CFOs is that you don't get those insights that you are actually looking for. So what exactly should we do? How the CFO should be able to influence the CIO, so to say, or the CEO to ensure that that planning is done at that stage, rather than just saying, no, we're going to implement S4HANA, or we're going to get into Ariba. But the crux of the matter is, if it's not giving insights to all of us, is it going to be useful in the long run?
Maybe Partha, you can put a practitioner's view first, then I'll come to the service provider view.
So I think, basically some of these questions are worth its weight and gold, because this is what starts the conversation growing, right? Now, if I were to say you didn't have the Oracle, you didn't have the things, what is the solution you will go to? Okay? And if you can start with that dialogue, I was saying dynamite everything and say what will you have. Then you build in the constraint, because the moment you start with constraint as a basis, your solutions are going to be suboptimal. If you start with a, what do you call it, blue ocean, then build in the constraint, then at least you are coming to it. I'll give you an example. We know that Mahindra and Mahindra as a company, and I give some of the examples because I spent 21 years, okay, so I can't go anywhere else to get examples, cannot produce electric vehicle with the speed that they can do. Okay, so why? Because they will say that it will take 4 years to make a product development. So will the world wait for that kind of time? So going and buying a company called Mahindra Electric, which is now called Mahindra Electric, earlier called Mahindra Reva, was a very important milestone, and as much as keeping it as separate, not merging it with Mahindra, was an important decision. Okay. So now will it happen if he kind of said there is constraint, we already have 500 engineers here and we have to use them. So will you ever be able to take that decision? And many of them are doing this technology. So I'm saying that you are absolutely on the right question. Go one step ahead and say, what's the output I need? And I say that I used to have an insight, and just to give meaning to it, I had an information and insight team. I used to call it IAC, Information and Insight Center. And I had said, you have no other job as to give me insight. Then I don't care what software you use or don't use, give me insight. Okay, so that's somebody saying you're talking too much, okay.
So I'll just add on to what Partha said.
How it happened?
Number one, if you go back to what I shared, if you start with technology first, then all the constraints will come in. If you start with your business architecture, if you start with your business model, because I'm pretty familiar with Boston Scientific, obviously you sell all the testing equipments and so on and so forth. The entire market is evolving towards as a service model, and again globally. And the way I look at it is, if you start with your business design, what are the business challenges you want to use, not with the technology first, you will possibly get some answers to that. For the rest of the gap, your service providers like us, Cloud4C, just joking, to help you stitch that too.
No, very interestingly, sorry, let me take you somewhere else. Practice is another company which is giving now CFO skills, right? So, and you know this, I mean, there may be other companies out, okay? And I'm not batting for Practice, but I'm just saying I used them recently. So when we had when I was doing a transformation for the entire all cargo, we are finding we are running out of short of critical skills. Then I told Practice, I can't build these skills overnight. Can you come in and do it? And they've taken over that entire thing as a turnkey project. Similarly, if you're thinking of solution of saying, hey, here it is what the company, let's say we work with on board of markets and markets. can say that, listen, I'll come and give you outputs right away. Third is if you come and say, I don't like anything, dynamite everything and give me a solution and tell me what will you charge for it, then they can give you solutions. So think about solutions. The way you have started asking the question is fantastic. You just extend that.
Can I go to Arnab at Schneider?
Yeah. Hi, Partha. Loved every bit of your presentation. I think I have taken a 2.5 page notes out of that. But I have one question and one comment. So first I'll come to the comment. I wanted to take up Amit's question here and share an experience. So we are an MNC and I have worked with MNCs before. So typically the measurement was top line and one profitability matrix, not essentially the full P&L, some part of the P&L, because a part of the P&L global cost managed globally, so on and so forth. A couple of years back we did a very significant acquisition and we brought a private equity partner. Now the matrix is top line, PBT, absolute value of cash and ROCE. So the point is 50% of the KPIs have moved to a balance sheet KPI from a P&L KPI. And Partha, you touched upon it beautifully, that if you have to get that 100% ROCE, that one turn of capital, to your example was 20%, versus you do a lot of P&L, you'll probably get a 5%. So it's a self-explanatory point on where it goes.
Yeah.
Now to the question, I think, while you guys talked a lot about learning, it's also a lot about what not to do, or the unlearning part of it. So do you want to share some perspective on that, that how to unlearn in the whole journey?
Thank you for asking that question. It can't be more fantastic question. So I want you to plot everything you have into enable, enhance and engender. If you'll find you're most of the time on enable. If 1 year from now you are on that, you are doing the same activity, then it's a big failure. I'm suggesting that take that list and say 12 months from now, I'll not be doing 90% of this. There'll be somebody else, it'll be so much empowerment. Somebody else in my organization will be doing that 90. And whatever time you create, take enhance and engender. Okay? And that could be counseling to yield, counseling strategy on yield, strategy on climb, strategy on prime, strategy on unmix, or strategy on fable. Does that answer your question? Because this is something that I'm now teaching the all cargo CFO. I'm saying, please don't do it. Create an organization, delegate.
It comes with risk, because if you make yourself so dispensable, you know.
Come and join me, please. I have lot of support required for the social work I'm doing. No, but that will be a legacy you will leave. So at worst case, you will still be the winner. At best case, you may be a legacy by yourself. You're a legend. No.
Okay, I would now like to go to Dinesh Kulkarni, please.
Hello. Thank you, Dinesh here from Kuwait. So this is one of the outstanding sessions, I would say. It's all pearls of wisdom are being thrown over here. That's what I could notice. Partha, particularly your point that co-creation of risk and reward review. This is a fantastic point that you brought over here. And I have one question on this, that yes, you can do the risk reward review and this would be statically done, but this is always the risk and reward, they are dynamically changing. So do you think it would be important also to see what kind of lead indicators we should keep in mind to understand how this relationship is shifting, and do you have anything to say on this point?
Yeah, so you answered the question. It is not static. It's not a one-time job. So the idea is to kind of put it out. But for example, let's say you and the CEO sit down and agree that I can take risk of 20% of my bottom line. Then it puts it in context, and you also agree therefore, and you're now also one of the CFO's role is another jargon of mine, and I'm good at throwing this one-liners, so sorry about this. Counsel without fear and assist without restraint. Our problem most of the time is we counsel without fear, but then we call it, I said so, I said so, I said so. So stop, you have to also assist without restraint. So now if it is 20%, you are also happy because you know what is your downside. Yeah. So therefore, if we are both all talking the same language, we can take when it to fail fast. So the context comes very fast. And I'll tell you an example where we failed. We spent money in two-wheelers where we spent 900 crores of loss before we decided to call it a day. Okay, so it can go on to your point. So how do you do an ongoing search of risk? Okay, so when it succeeds, everybody talks. When it fails, nobody talks. So you have to bring up that point. So, and is this dialogue happening every periodic basis? Highest can be 1 year, but it can be every quarter also, depending on your business.
Thank you.
Can I go to Adarsh Mundra at Yara Fertilizer?
Hello. My question is, as CFOs, we have a responsibility to report the top line and bottom line in time, and also think about efficiency, which comes through automation. Now, these days, the reporting part takes place through the ERP, and then efficiency comes through various, applications which go into the ERP. Now, you have things for credit management, procurement, HR has one, and customer relations, capex, blah blah, host of things. And if the companies are not there, then they are trying to build all those things and enhance the capabilities of these enabling applications. Now, it's not as simple, because in the changing and evolving time, you need to put in a lot of time and effort to see that each of these applications which are feeding to your main ERP are well maintained, well designed, and the chance of failure is very high. The CFO, the poor CFO, has limited time. So, how can we as CFOs, do our job well, trying to maintain all these applications, and then, do our core job of reporting on time and increasing efficiency? Thanks.
So you want to answer some part of it, and I'll come in.
Yeah, you can. Okay. So if I get your question right, how do you use technology and how do you use your managerial capability?
Yeah, multitasking.
Multitasking. So you need to have a partner, and that's why I said your technology advisor, whether it's a CIO, IT manager, CTO, CDO, got to be your partner. You can't do it on your own, right? That's number one. It's always two in a box. Partha could do both in the same box. So that's a different issue. The reason I'm saying is, when you have that partner, you're driving the board agenda or the stakeholder agenda as a CFO. Top line, bottom line, everything else. Right? And the inputs are coming from the various sources. Internal sources, because most of the time we look at only internal sources. Today, if you see, more than 60%, depending upon what kind of business you're in, more than 60% of the inputs will be external sources. Right? How do you put all the data together? Right? How do you ask the right questions? How do you guide your partner what to look for? Right? It is not, that's why I said the role of the CIO is not just as a technologist. He has to be business insider. He or she has to have the empathy to understand what a customer looks like, what an employee looks like. That's when you will have a true partnership. Right? So the answer does not lie to the previous point, not in more technology. How you work that partnership, and how do you leverage your ecosystem, and how do you put the right questions to be able to address this is, in my mind, I've gone through many of these implementations. I spent 20 years with SAP. So I've gone through many of these implementations and projects and things like that. And that would be, I would say, my experience in being able to see what success looks like across multitude of industries, organizations, and things like that.
So all answered except one add 2 points. One is, can you think about, earlier you used to have a system wherein you did most of you spent time checking, right, and rechecking. Can you say in a computer environment, what is that your accounts people don't need to do, and rather concentrate on RCM, risk matrix, share of work, a segregation of duties? Yeah, so these are all computer feeded programs, right? So these are all control metrics. So can you do? Second is, how do you use your statutory auditor and your internal auditor to do these jobs for you? Because that they used to do test check earlier, which used to go. Now they're not doing that test check. You say, use that time to do this for me, no? Both internal auditor and this. Why are they wasting time in other areas? Say, this is what I need most.
Yeah, absolutely right. So now what I'm going to do is we are going to take 3 questions together. So, and then we will close because we are a little past 12:30 closing time. But PepsiCo first, Mayank, and then Century, Snail Shah, and then First American, Madhu. So go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, Partha and Deb, thanks for a great, insightful session. My question is related, Partha, you touched upon it's okay to fail, right? But to fail fast and more importantly, learn from the failures. Now, it's great thing to have, but in practical terms, how to build or inculcate that culture within the organization, and where a CFO can play a part, because one side you are like a custodian of money in the sense that you need the return for the money, but on the other side, how you can support in inculcating this behavior within the organization. So,
okay.
No, we take all together.
And 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I too want to congratulate you for a fantastic session, and I'm happy that it happened before lunch. So there are a lot of serious questions. I have one serious question and one very basic and specific question. The serious question is, everybody talks about, I think even the gentleman who spoke, learning from failure. But what has been your experience about, was there a culture of learning from success? Because that is also important, because then you don't fail if you learn from your success. So that is one aspect. And my specific question is, a problem I faced is, I think you alluded to negative working capital. So during COVID time, you know, cash conservation was like on top of everybody's mind. So everybody was getting into this negative working capital scenario. Cash conservation comes at a cost of growth, and therefore negative working capital, particularly for some manufacturing organization, unless you are your Puriwala or a Udupi hotel and something like that, that's fine. But you can't work with negative working capital and, you know, have growth. So what do you feel, that is it possible to grow with negative working capital in a manufacturing organization?
And finally, First American.
Yeah, here this side, Partha. Thank you very much for a very nice presentation. And more on a lighter note, there is a secret you are not telling us. If you maintain 120% for 8 years without reducing prices or passing on the benefits, how you are able to do it? Tell us that also, because sometimes people feel apologetic about higher profits or returns.
So on a very lighter note, अगर घोड़ा घास से दोस्ती कर लेगा तो खाएगा क्या?
Okay, so let's start with Mayank's first. It's okay to fail, learn from failures. How can CFOs play a role? Because inherently, failures are orphans.
Yeah. So maybe I'll start off just. I alluded to that. You know, I think what we are talking about is the culture, organization culture. It is not just the CFO agenda; it has to be the board agenda. Right from the CEO to the chairman, that yes, for us to either diversify or to experiment, we have to put some amount of risk capital. If that sign off is not there, then CFO, obviously on their own, Partha, you may agree, CFO on their own will not be able to take that decision. If there is a business buy-in, that yes, these are the business incubation we got to do, either internally through skunkworks or externally by encouraging startups or ecosystems and things like that, or partnerships. So first and foremost, that has to be pretty much a board agenda, right? That yes, I'm going to put this amount of capital over this period of time to make this risk, take these bets. And knowing very well, like you have to think in a way like a venture capital or a private equity, that I might get zero return. And that's why I said it's an executive decision at a board level. the benefits are higher, right? Out of typically how a VC works, if I make 100 investments, if it's like Bollywood or Hollywood, I make 100 movies, 2 makes a hit, I take care of everything else. So the thinking has to, on one hand, the governance and risk, on the other hand, you have to think like a venture capital, right? How do you, because there the risk reward equation is completely different. For that 10%, 20%, 5%, what do you want to put? So that's number one. So otherwise, you know, it is all lip service, talking about learning from failure, success, all of that. Only thing and your KRS has to be different, right? I say all this lip service and then I put the KRS only on success matrix. That's not going to work, right? So that's why the setup has got to be a little different, right? So that's a fundamental aspect on the business structure and the business organization at the executive level, what needs to be done, right? And the respective KRAs. So CFO as a custodian, you know, okay, this is the amount I'm playing with for this period of time. It can be a zero return. So I think that's a fundamental in my mind, which one has to think through.
Was there a third question or a second question? Sir?
Well, I mean, the other really was negative working capital and its ability to undermine growth. And I Sel made a very valid, I have never learned from my failures because I couldn't understand what the hell went wrong. But I have learned from my successes as to what actually worked and try something similar.
So you know, Gallup has this very important axiom which they say, build on your strength. Don't, you know, fret too much on your weakness, right? So, okay, so in a sense they're saying it takes huge amount of effort to convert that weakness to even neutral, but your strength building can give you much more benefit. So if you thought that your success stories will give you, then better to work on success. But success I found inculcate into the company very quickly as fables, and which is why I alluded to that word fable. The one way you keep your success as a culture is through fables, by telling stories and making encouraging people to do that kind or take that kind of risks. So I would encourage you to use the fable or any other route to make sure everybody understands. Yeah, okay. So the second to your question, I have a slight two small points to make. One is, have you got over the thing of failing fast? That means, can you apply the principle of sunk cost quickly? So it starts with you. I don't want to ask anybody else. Just let's start with you and me. Can we accept it? Sunk cost principle. And say that, am I throwing good money at a bad money is the criteria I'm applying? Or am I applying ki arey? And I told you one thing, two-wheeler, every time we said kuch na kuch theek ho jayega, abhi karne do aur thoda paise dalte hain iske piche. So I was throwing good money after bad money. My chairman was asking me every time, कि पार्था तू ठीक कर रहा है ना, तू सवाल नहीं पूछ रहा इसमें. So he was willing to accept failing first. I was not willing to accept. The problem was with me. Okay, so that's one. Second thing is, in your own treasury department, they make loss on transaction, right? But you allow them to do so. Venture capitalists do that a living. All traders do that for a living. Can we learn from them in terms of inculcating? To me, the learning from failure is not too much, is not too hard at our levels once we get it intellectually and get the right inputs. The problem is when a guy fails, when a person fails, when a lady fails, what do you do with that person, that man or lady, for the next job? Are they takers in the organization or not? That will determine whether you want to accept failures or not. Other things are all bullshit. It will always get written off. But people getting written off is what you have to avoid if you ever want success about learning from failures. Okay? So that's the one. And working capital, sir, I worked with auto sector now for 21 years or more than that. It was always at negative working capital. It was never a constraint on growth. Okay? So therefore, I don't think it is an axiom. As an axiom, it is true. There will be many industries. Basically what it is, how much money does your customer need? If he is going to pay cash, which all retail customers in auto do, And if you get 30 to 60-day creditors, it is negative working capital. It's automatically, the business lends to itself. Yeah. So now tractor, which again sells retail, and this is not working capital. So the remark was in context of a cycle. Now if it constraining your growth, you can apply two strategies. How about discounting, or how about factoring? And you get a P&L, you get a balance sheet benefit, and he said if you do P&L, you'll get 2% benefit. If you get a balance sheet, you may get 30. So go for, depends, see what is the trade-off and decide on which is better for you.
See, if you are taking India as a company, then its growth will be faster if we run a fiscal deficit. Yeah. If we ran a fiscal surplus, then an economy will grow more slowly. So I understand where his question is coming from economically.
All I'm saying is that don't constrain growth. First is that. Yeah. Second is, can you see other techniques? Because in financials, we have these techniques available. Unlike India can't factor, but I can.
Yeah. Well, on that happy note, we will conclude. There's going to be lunch right outside, and then we reassemble here at 1:30, please. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the great value in sessions like this is of people who have undergone journeys, learned from experiences of others, and are able to share it so beautifully to all of us. And I'm very grateful to Deep and Partha for having made the time to do so. Thank you. Thank you.